Here where I live in the mountains east of San Diego, it's been pretty cold lately. In fact, it's been snowing a bit. So I decided to do another little e-bike adventure, and I wanted to go someplace warm. A place I like to go is out to the Colorado River. There are a number of places I like to stay out there, and this time I thought I'd go to an RV resort in Blythe, California, and that's right on the border, the California and Arizona border at the Colorado River. I decided for this trip I wanted to camp and to ride my bike for a few days. I figured I'd sleep in the back of the weekend mobile, my Jeep, at the campground. One of the cool things about riding next to the river is there's lots of places that you can just stop and go for a swim. And since I always do these little adventures during the middle of the week, there's usually no one around, so I can just go skinny dipping. Well, in my case, I'd call it not so skinny dipping. No pictures of that. From my home, the drive out to Blythe is about a 3-hour drive, but I seldom drive straight through to anywhere. I always make a lot of stops along the way. And this road trip was no different. On this trip, I stopped at a place called the Osborne Park Overlook. And this is a combination rest stop and camping area in the middle of the Great Imperial Sand Dunes, commonly known as Glamis. This is a super popular dune buggy and off-roading area, and this is an area that you could really say is really in the middle of nowhere. There are sand dunes for miles. Well, when I made it to my destination in Blythe, the temperature was in the high 90s, and that's when I decided to opt for some comfort. I figured I'd go for a clean, comfortable bed, air conditioning, a pool and jacuzzi, and a free breakfast. Since it was the middle of the week, it was pretty easy to find a good room. Since my plans had changed a bit, it was getting a little bit later in the day, but I was still anxious to get in a short ride before dark. So I ended up just dumping all my stuff on the bed and heading out for what I thought, or what I had planned, to be a quick 30-minute ride. But like usual, once I got on the bike and started riding, I got into the zone and was having a blast, even though the temperatures were still about 95 degrees Fahrenheit. I rode to and through the campground I was originally going to stay at, which was about an hour away. And before I realized it, it was getting late and I needed to get back. At that point, I decided to take the direct route back, but unfortunately, this was going to take me right through the middle of town, right at the major after-work traffic time. Also, another thing that I hadn't counted on was the sun. Not so much for the heat, but the position on the horizon. It was directly in line with the road and right at the height that was blinding. I was headed right into it and it was brutal. I couldn't see a thing, and the road was so full of potholes, and it was cracked, it was rough. I had to keep both hands on the handlebars so I couldn't shield my eyes from the sun. It was so blinding that I almost ran headlong into some parked cars. I was also worried that if I couldn't see, then the cars coming up from behind me surely couldn't see me. At this point, my eyes were burning so much, I was really worried I was going to get hit or crash. So I pulled over and waited for the sun to settle below the horizon so I could make it home safely. I waited about 30 minutes, and then it was really an easy ride home. The first thing I did when I got back was hit the jacuzzi tub and the pool. That was a great way to end the day. That night, and in the morning for that matter, I was sure glad I opted for the comfort. The air conditioning was great, and the free breakfast was a perfect way to start my e-biking adventure day. In the morning, I headed off to a place called Ketchen Park, which is about an hour or so from where I was staying. It's a little lagoon just off the main river. Lots of wildlife in the calm water. Then I headed over to the edge of the main part of the river and decided to go for a little dip. It was a short dip because the water was freezing. But, I had to do it since I was there. My thinking was, you can't go all the way out to the river and not go for a swim, no matter how cold the water is. And yes, I did go skinny dipping, and no, I didn't take any pictures of it. After the super cold swim, the weather actually felt really, really good after that. And I decided to cross over the bridge to Ehrenberg, Arizona. Even though there's an iron fence separating the pedestrian walkway from the cars, it's still a little unnerving and cool at the same time to have these huge semis whizzing by at only a couple feet away. Actually, it's not that bad because the traffic is slowing down because they're getting ready to get into the agricultural checkpoint when you come into California from Arizona. In Ehrenberg, just across the bridge, there's a famous place called the Thelantramat, and it's well known to the nomadic RV crowd. It's a bit of an everything store. You can, of course, do your laundry there, but they have groceries, clothing, sporting gear, and you can even get a fishing license there. Now, this day, I made sure to head back or be heading back before the sun got too low on the horizon. On the last morning, I took advantage of the free breakfast again, of course. Took another great ride and then loaded up and checked out and headed home. All in all, it was another great and inexpensive e-bike adventure. These short but super fun little e-bike adventures sure rejuvenate my mind, body, and soul. Let me know where you take your e-bike adventures to fill your mind, body, and soul.